I just want to welcome everybody and just say thank you for coming today to our Recharging Resiliency Together. Let's all say that together. I'm joking. We won't do that. But it can be a little bit of a tongue twister. But we got a good hour and a half planned today. We have some phenomenal speakers who I've known for Kristen not as long, but she's a great speaker. And Carolyn Wheeler is one of my friends for many years now. And every time I get a chance to put Carolyn in front of a bunch of people, I try to take advantage of that. So a couple thanks real quick. I want to thank the Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation for sponsoring this through a grant. And I want to thank Brandy Canada, who is on here somewhere and has always been so much help with all things HDI and administratively for sure with these conferences. And my counterpart, Lindsay Mullis, who's on here. Lindsay is also a great friend and has been it's always great to have around to make me look better than I obviously am to those who know me well. But
it's a hard job. It's a hard job.
That's a full-time job. Yes, it is. I just want to let everybody know captioning is available. It is turned on. If you go to the bottom where it says live transcript at the bottom of the page, you can choose to have it come up like closed captioning does on television. Or if you pick the live transcript, it'll show whose voice it is and everything on the right side of the screen in the chat window. This is going to be a little different than some of the ones we've done before. I would encourage everyone to speak up. Whenever you have a comment to make, Carolyn and Kristen both have expressed they would love some discussion. Unless you can't stand it, we would really love for you to turn your cameras on. I'm sure all of you look better than you think you do, but if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. It is definitely not a requirement, but we will not call you out if you're eating, sleeping, or drinking. Well, we will try not to at least. But if you could turn your cameras on, if you don't feel comfortable with that, I totally understand that too. What am I missing? Okay, just real quick, a little plug. Kentucky Congress for Spinal Cord Injury is doing our 9th annual Congress. It is coming up Tuesday on the 19th. It is from 1 to 4 p.m. And if you've not received that invitation already, please let me know. It is going to be a wonderful conference this year. We have some really cool things planned. As always, Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation is sponsoring that as well, along with the Human Development Institute. And of course, Superior Van Mobility. I got to give a shout out to my man, Paul, who always steps up and helps us out. So with that, I'm going to play a short video from the Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation. And this is Mark Bogosian, who is our counterpart or our contact, I guess you would say, at Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation. And it is always a pleasure to work with them and all the amazing things they do as a person with spinal cord injuries. I'm humbled at their approach and at the things that they try to accomplish for all of us who have a spinal cord injury. All right, let's see if we can find it here. Promise I got it somewhere here. All right, take it away, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Bogosian. I'm the director of the Quality of Life Grants Program at the Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation. The foundation is honored to be funding the Recharging Resiliency Together workshops. This funding is made available through the Reed Foundation's special grants program entitled COVID-19, Addressing Social Isolation. Ongoing research on COVID-19 shows that social isolation and loneliness due to the coronavirus pandemic have been linked to many physical and mental health problems, including heart disease, diabetes, heart failure, stroke, dementia, anxiety, and depression. Surveys and data that we collected at the Reed Foundation and also from our stakeholders in the field of paralysis research have indicated that social isolation has had the #1 negative impact on the lives of people living with disabilities relative to the COVID-19 pandemic. So in response and in collaboration with the Administration for Community Living, a grants program was developed and implemented to address social isolation during the pandemic with the goal of mitigating the physical, mental, and behavioral impacts and enhancing connectedness of people living with paralysis and their caregivers to their communities to also prevent adverse health outcomes. Now, the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute was one of 11 organizations awarded in our first cohort. And I congratulate them on the great work that they have undertaken with this grant. And I congratulate them on this series of workshops. I also want to invite all of you who are participating in these virtual workshops for people living with paralysis to learn more about all of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's Quality of Life Grants programs by visiting www.christopherreeve.org. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay Mullis, who will introduce our first speaker today.
Thank you so much, Jason. I'm really excited to be able to introduce Ms. Kristen Dahl. She is a licensed professional clinical counselor and a certified health education specialist. Kristen serves as a program manager for the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. She's passionate about advocating for mental health and wellness, loves to read fiction, and has a huge collection of fidgets to help her stay still and in camera range on Zoom meetings. She's going to talk to us about some wonderful things today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation, Kristen.
Thank you, Lindsay. Welcome, everybody. I'm really glad to be here today to have some time to connect with you. I'm Kristen Dahl. As Lindsay said, my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a middle-aged white woman with long blonde hair. I'm wearing an olive green shirt and tortoiseshell glasses. I am a mental health and mental wellness advocate, and I think that our current life and times, we need to all be mental wellness advocates. So today we're just going to talk a little about why mental wellness matters, and we're going to use these core components of connection, wellness, meaning, and healthy thinking. And I was really excited to see the connection one because I would really love for this to be interactive and to connect on a few different levels today, hopefully with a few activities that will be enjoyable. I have a Dropbox folder that I will share. When I'm presenting, I always have trouble sharing with the chat, but I will get the chat up, and when Carolyn's going, and I'll share my Dropbox folder that has this presentation and some other resources for you. Okay, I've never done this in a presentation, but this seems like the perfect day. So, I mean, I've done Would You Rather before because I love activities, but I've never done this part. So I want you to pick your favorite Zoom filter or Zoom background. It can be wild. You can give yourself mask, mouth, ears. You can change your lip color on there. You can have a beard. So if everybody just wants to take a minute down at the bottom of your screen with your virtual background, you can choose a Zoom filter or a Zoom background. That would be fun if you would like to do that. And I don't actually know how to do that while I'm sharing my, oh yeah, there we go. So I'm going to change mine too. I'm going to change my background.
Yeah, if you go to filters is where you get all the fun stuff.
Yeah, filters are really fun, or background.
Kristen, do you maybe want to stop sharing your screen, and then that way everybody can put it in gallery view so we can all see each other's.
Oh, can you all not do gallery view with that while I'm doing this?
So if you guys go up to the top right hand of your screen, you can choose to have speaker or standard, and then gallery is another option. So that way you can see everybody that's putting their fun backgrounds. I've got pups as my bodyguards. Brandon's got, is that Tiger King?
Tiger King.
Yeah.
Got some dogs in the background. Some Christmas lights. Okay, well, you guys do that. I'm gonna talk about our next activity. So we're gonna do Would You Rather game. And so down at the bottom of the screen, I'm using a lot of Zoom tools today, aren't I? At the bottom, there's a reaction button that you can use, the heart or the little party hat, which is actually called ta-da, or you can unmute and say which thing that you like, or you can put it in chat, whatever you're the most comfortable with for playing Would You Rather. So I'm just going to ask a few questions. Would you rather, and this is our practice. So if I say, would you rather have spring or fall. Spring is the first one, so you would use your heart, and fall is the second one, so you would use your party hat in the chat or with the reaction. Okay, so we've got some fall. I'm a fall person too. A couple of spring. Oh wait, maybe spring's gonna outnumber falls. So we've got some spring. So that's our practice round. The rest of these. Would you rather have a completely automated home? So that's your first choice, the heart, or a self-driving car, your second choice, and that's the ta-da. So would you rather have a completely automated home or a self-driving car? Seeing a lot of completely automated homes, one self-driving car, a couple of self-driving cars. I think that one's a really tough one. I think all of these are tough. I think an automated home would be quite amazing, right? We've got some homes in chat too. Okay. Would you rather never be stuck in traffic again or never get another cold? Never be stuck in traffic, heart. Never get another cold, party hat. Hey, you guys are choosing traffic. I'd choose the cold. I have a couple of chronic illnesses, and like a cold is a big deal, but traffic is also, especially lately, right? If you have to go across the Clays Ferry Bridge, there's a lot going on there. Would you rather be completely invisible for one day, heart, or be able to fly for one day, ta-da, or the party hat? Got some flies. Got some invisible. This one looks pretty split. Let me see what's in chat. Okay, all right. So several of you want to be invisible and several of you would like to fly. Would you rather never be angry, heart, or never be envious? Party hat. Never be angry. Would you rather never be angry, so you never have to be angry again, or you never have to be envious or jealous again? What do you choose? It's like a lot of angry.
So Kristen, just a quick question. So if we never have to be angry again, does that mean everything that makes us angry goes away? Because I can't imagine you wouldn't choose that one in that situation.
Well, it's open to your interpretation. I can't define what it means to you.
That's a big heart for me.
I'd never be envious. I see a lot of the angry, couple of envious. Would you rather never play video games again, heart, or never use your favorite mobile app again? Never play video games, never play your favorite mobile app. Oh, video games. Everybody's going video games because you can go like on the internet and get to most of your apps, right? Is that what we're reasoning? That one's pretty much, you guys are pretty divided on that one. Carolyn doesn't play video games. Would you rather be an only child, heart, or have 10 siblings, party hat? Siblings. One only child. I'd be interested to know if how many siblings you currently have. Oh, I totally forgot to take my filter off. I do the whole time with the filter on. There we go. Okay, four is a lot. Yeah. And last question, would you rather be immortal on a mortal planet or be mortal on an immortal planet? I'm going to repeat that. Would you rather be immortal on a mortal planet, heart, or mortal on an immortal planet, party hat? So do you want to live forever with everybody else not, or do you want to not live forever with everybody else who is? I see some hearts. Couple, so one party hat. So those are just questions that I wanted to use to get us thinking and to connect with you guys and learn a little bit more about you. And I'm going to talk a little about mental health. Do you have control over your mental wellness? We hear about taking care of our mental health, and we know that right now there's a mental health crisis happening during the pandemic. We don't know how far-reaching it will be, but we know that we're all part of this collective trauma Last week was World Mental Health Day, and we've got athletes like Simone Biles, and we've got movements like the Free Britney movement. And so we're hearing more about mental health, but we have a long way to go to reduce the stigma. So what is mental health? Mental health affects how we think, feel, and behave. It includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It helps determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make healthy choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence, adulthood, aging, and mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So it really encompasses a lot, maybe not what we think of as being, happy or sad sometimes, but there's a lot. Although the terms are often used interchangeably, poor mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. So a person can experience poor mental health and not be diagnosed with mental illness, or a person diagnosed with mental illness can experience periods of physical, mental, and social wellness. One study found that spinal cord injuries doubled the risk of mental health concerns, with about 50% of people experiencing depression, 37% with anxiety, 8% with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, and overall about 25% feeling significant levels of stress. So how is your mental wellness? We're just going to ask ourselves a few questions, and you don't have to answer. You can just think about these, but these are things that might encompass your mental wellness. Mental wellness. Am I aware of my emotions, thoughts, and experiences? Am I open to difficult thoughts, emotions, and experiences without avoiding them? And am I engaged with the present moment? We hear a lot right now about being in the present, and that's because the research shows us that that's really important for our brains and our mental wellness, is to be able to be in the present moment and not thinking of the future or reliving the past. Mindfulness is a word that we hear a lot. It's kind of buzzy right now, and that's probably because it works. It's one of the best evidence-based, well-researched, positive effects that we can have on our mental wellness. It's to be in the present moment and be mindful of what's happening around us. Anyone can do it. Everyone can practice mindfulness. It does take practice to become effective. Mindfulness is being fully present and aware of what we are sensing and what we are feeling in the moment, without interpretation and without judgment. Practicing mindfulness involves breathing, meditation, guided imagery, or other ways to relax the body and the mind and to help reduce stress. Mindfulness incorporates all of our senses. So when you experience stress, your muscles tighten, your breath quickens, your pulse speeds up. By just slowing down our breathing, just that one thing, we can directly counter the automatic stress response and give somewhere to focus your attention. You've probably heard of breathing to relax. It's true. Maybe you're tired of hearing it, but it's really one of the best techniques, and it down-regulates your nervous system. So we're going to practice a few things to do with mindfulness. And I acknowledge that we all have different abilities and challenges with sensory information. Some of you may have reduced feeling in your extremities. I have no sense of smell from something that's wrong with me long before COVID. So just do what feels most natural, but we're all in different places. So we're going to practice a little bit of mindful breathing right now. I've put a visual on the slide if you would like to use that for your breathing in, hold, breathe out. And you can close your eyes or leave them opened on your camera, off your camera, whatever's most comfortable for you. So take a big breath in and feel your lungs expand, and breathe out. This time when you breathe in, allow your jaw to soften. Touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Breathe out. This time when you breathe in, relax your shoulders away from your ears. Breathe into your throat so that your breath comes right here, and breathe out. Breathe in again and put your breath in your chest. And breathe out. And breathe in and think about your breath in your belly. And breathe out. When you breathe, think about your chest expanding front to back, and you fill it up. And breathe out. And this time, think about it filling side to side. And breathe out. Breathe in a sense of goodness, safety, and acceptance. Breathe out any tension that you are holding. Breathe in a sense of well-being, a sense of kindness towards yourself, and a sense of gratitude. Take one more breath in, hold it, and breathe out. So that's practicing a few breaths of mindful breathing. And it really has a lot of positive effects on your body, even though we just took a few breaths there. So there are different ways to do mindful breathing. We practice a couple, and the effects are it reduces stress levels in your body, lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. It can improve diabetic symptoms and reduce depression, better manage chronic pain, better regulate your body's reaction to stress, reduce the possibility of burnout for caregivers. Mindfulness practice over time has been shown to actually shrink the amygdala. So in the back of your brain, you have this little almond-shaped amygdala, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. And it also thickens your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for awareness, concentration, and decision-making. So when your brain senses danger, it activates the amygdala, and you get adrenaline and you get cortisol, which reduces pain so that you can do what you need to do. Your survival overrides your rational brain. That's great if you're being chased by zombies, but it's not great for prolonged trauma where your brain gets hyper triggered by things as simple as a color or a sound. So the good news is that your brains are amazing and they have neuroplasticity. And that means that they can make new pathways. They're adaptable. So by doing things like being mindful, you're making these new pathways that shut off that emergency response system and help you focus and help calm your brain. One really easy way to practice mindfulness is apps. Does anybody have a favorite app? And you can unmute or you can put it in chat. Somebody's having trouble hearing. So is that an overall thing? Or is anybody else having trouble hearing?
I can hear you, Kristen, pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have a favorite app or favorite something that you meditate to, if you'll share it in the chat, and then Happify, okay, Headspace. I love Headspace. Headspace has gotten really big. Word Crush. There's also Calm. And then Spotify has several options as well. And they actually will build like if you meditate a few times on Spotify, it will build a list for you called your daily wellness. And it includes all different kinds of meditations that you kind of can skip around and see what you like. So there's some really good options. A lot of them are free or have free versions that you can use to practice a daily mindfulness. There's even something on Netflix now, and I think it's Headspace, that has
Amazon Alexa works really well too, Chris.
Okay, yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
Alexa. And Netflix has one. I think you can even choose like how you're feeling. You can choose the episode. So there's lots of different options out there. Let's talk a little bit about stress. Stress is not inherently bad for you, but getting stuck can be difficult for your mental wellness. So there's something called rumination, And that's thinking the same thing over and over. It's usually dark thoughts or sad thoughts, and it's pretty unhealthy for your mental wellness. So think of maybe a conversation that you had that didn't go the way you wanted, and afterwards we just do this, what if I'd said that, or I wish I'd said that, or if only. That's rumination, and you can get stuck in that, having that conversation over and over, and that's just not healthy for your mental wellness. When you're mentally well, you can go through times of adversity or risky situations or adventures to be safety without getting stuck in that emergency mindset of your brain. It's being able to handle stress and still have a sense of balance, learn new things, keep your schedule, find pleasure in hobbies, eat nutritious food, and connect with your family and friends. We have all experienced times of uncertainty, and one thing that can help lessen those is to focus on what we can control. So I've got here on the slide what's happening in your world, what do you have control over, what is out of your control. So if you want to put in the chat some things that you have control over, or if you want to unmute and share those, or some things that you feel, let's do control over first. What do we have control over? We have control over the effort that we put into stuff, your own behaviors.
Control over your own behaviors, so I was gonna say your own reactions.
How I decide to act.
Control my choices that I make.
Control of the choices that you make.
Yeah, I put down what I eat and when I go to bed. I think we just way too overlook. I mean, I know some of us don't have control over when we go to bed, especially Lindsay right now. But you know, when you do have that control as your kids get older, you should take advantage.
Right, so these things might be a little different for us, but yes, control over what you eat and when you go to bed, when you make appointments, maybe how much you exercise, or if you choose to exercise. There's levels of control. Your attitude, initiating conversations, connections with friends and family members who don't live here. Okay, choices, thoughts. So those are some of the things that we do have control over that can give us this sense of power and a sense of balance. What about things that are out of our control? Often we think about these a lot, but what's something that we can control?
Politics.
Reactions.
Politics, other people's attitudes, other people's reactions. You may have pain in your body that you can't control. You can't control what's on the news. Can't control the future. So those are the things that we may spend our energy on, but that are not good for our mental wellness because we can't control those.
What about you can't change the past?
You can't change the past. Excellent. You can't change the past, so we shouldn't spend our time there thinking about it. That's a great example. Others' ignorance. That's right. You cannot change that. I mean, you may be able, people may learn, but in general, you can't control that. The crazy things going on in our community, for sure. So let's talk a little about how that can lead to social isolation and loneliness. If we get stuck in the past, in the future, in politics and some of those things, we may have a tendency to withdraw, and then we may experience social isolation and loneliness. This is particularly strong right now, or particularly where a lot of people are going through this because we're going through a pandemic. So that's resulted in a lot of social distancing and cancellations of activities. And it's a really hard time to fight at least some parts of social isolation and loneliness, just because we're often alone so much now as a protective health measure. Social isolation and loneliness is feeling cut off from one another. So you can't see your friends, you can't touch your friends or family, you lose a sense of connection to others. And it's easy, once you're down that road, it's easy to become more socially isolated. Social isolation has some serious physical problems though. It can increase your risk of dementia, of stroke, and of heart disease. So it's important that we not continue on in social isolation. Loneliness happens when the level of social connections is higher than the social connections that we experience. So the best way to overcome loneliness and social isolation is to connect meaningfully with others. So if you can think back to an event when you were interacting with others, and hopefully we've been able to put some interaction in here today. How are we able to connect, or how are you able to connect in that event or conversation? I've asked questions today. I've tried to come up with activities because that's all really important in my social life. Over the past year, I've had cookie parties online and happy hours online and Netflix watch parties online. And so there's some ways that we can connect to each other, but they do take planning and they do take effort. And sometimes you just don't feel like you have that energy. But it's important to try to make at least small steps, schedule a phone call with somebody or lean on your support system, and advocate for your needs with health, with caregivers, with family, with friends. And sometimes there's too much help. Sometimes there's too much physical help, and you have to be open about those needs too. And that to fight that social isolation, because maybe you just need some space to get back to being involved with your social group. So my question that I would like you guys to answer is, thinking about social isolation and loneliness, does social media hurt or help? And I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Both.
Kristen, I would say both as well. And I wanted to share too, real quick, something that I started doing, and it was not my idea, it was someone else's, but I realized at some point, I've got this whole list of contacts on my phone, and I've got all these people that follow me on social media that, were friends at one point or whatever. And if I just try to pick one a week and just reach out and say, hey, I was thinking about you. And because I got a call like that, and it made me feel amazing that someone out in the world that I've not talked to in a couple of years said, hey, I was just wondering how you're doing. And it is a really cool way to connect. You don't really have a lot to talk about, because if you don't live life daily with somebody, there's not, once you get past the how's the kids, how's the wife, all that kind of stuff. But it's been really cool. Like it could probably be a book at this point, just those interactions with people that have kind of just fallen to the wayside over the years.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think it really makes a difference. It makes a difference for both of you, right? It makes a difference for you, and it made a difference for that person. And I've been trying to do something similar, just with scrolling through my text list and just send somebody a text that I haven't seen for a while. Just pick like a random. Okay, I'm going to text somebody in my M section today and see how they're doing. I think that's a great idea. Does anybody else have ideas around that they would like to share? We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Okay, so for the social media, we've got both, but I think it's more hurtful than helpful. Both leans towards hurt. Both, you live staying in touch with friends, but you hate the arguing and political mean comments. Yeah, it's gotten to be where I think a lot of people feel like they can say anything on a social media post without any accountability for their feelings or anyone else's feelings. And on the flip side of that, wow, we can stay in touch with people who are far away so much easier, or our friends when we can't see them, when we can't go out to a restaurant, then we can stay in touch on social media. So it is, I agree, it's both. It does a lot of damage, and it gives a lot of opportunity. So I don't have a good answer for whether it hurts or helps, other than I agree with you guys, and it does both.
Something I wanted to mention, Kristen, is thinking about how it can sometimes be a distraction from that more personal interaction. So, I do the same as you, where I send text messages every once in a while when I'm thinking of somebody, or going out of my way to scroll and see who I haven't texted in a while. But, I have individuals that come to mind that I think about that go to great lengths to have a very active social media profile, but yet don't respond to a text message or a phone call, or could be sitting in the same room together and they're too busy scrolling on their social media to interact with somebody, and that's sitting right across from them. So I think that's another thing too, of thinking about, how the connection that we make with people, there's the virtual connection, and how does that different experience from having, a more personal connection in a physical plane.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's also brings in how people craft their social media appearance. Is it real? Is it their real life? Is this how they're really living, or is this just the image that they want to portray, and inside they're really struggling, so they don't take the time to have that personal connection with you, and that's to their detriment. So yeah, there's a lot of considerations when it comes to your online life.
Lindsay, I agree with you on that point. I hate being around people and they're sitting there looking at their phones, scroll, messing with Facebook, whatever, and you're right there. You might as well not even be around. So I fully agree with you. I hate that.
It's tough.
Heather, for sure. I think it's hard sometimes to recognize that social media addiction, and I know there's some research on that about the endorphins in your brain when you get likes or you respond to different things. So it's just interesting how there's different reactions for virtual connectivity and then real person opportunities, right?
Exactly.
So Lindsay brought up meaningful connection. So that's what we do to enhance our mental wellness. We cultivate meaningful connections. And some of those are to serve others, to check on someone, which we talked about, prioritize your own well-being, take risks, clarify your values and boundaries, even if it's in the face of difficult emotions, thoughts, and experiences. And that one's really hard to do. But it does create these meaningful connections if you're willing to say to someone else, hey, you're outside my boundaries. I want to stay in a relationship with you, but this is what I need. Journaling, gratitude, just labeling your feelings. I feel angry, random acts of kindness, funniest TV shows, so cultivating humor. What's a really funny TV show that you've watched that's maybe one of your favorites or that you're watching right now?
Ted Lasso is the best show on television.
What is
hands
it?
down. Ted Lasso is the best show on television, hands down.
Ted Lasso, you've got someone who agrees with you. New girl. Ted Lasso is on my list. I don't have Apple TV. I'd really like to watch it though. Always Golden Girls. That's a really good one.
The Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory. Very funny. King of Queens over and over. Yeah.
Sanford and Son.
Sanford and Son. We're going way back there.
Absolutely.
I really like Parks and Recreation to revisit for a funny one.
Yeah, that's one. The Office you can watch over and over and over again too. Seinfeld.
Yeah. I like Dairy Girls too. If you were growing up in the 80s, you might check out Dairy Girls on Netflix. I think it's really funny. And I would like to add personally to the list, being okay with being at the end of your rope and sharing that with someone else. Just say, hey, I'm at the end of my rope. I really think that can cultivate a meaningful connection. There has been so much toxic positivity over the pandemic. And toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how difficult a situation is, for instance, COVID, that people should maintain a positive mindset. So if you didn't learn a new language in COVID, what's wrong with you? Or if you didn't learn to bread, everybody made bread, right? I didn't learn to make bread. I'm lucky that I get my pants on before a call, to be honest. Today I do have pants on, but I don't have shoes on. So we're all in this extended trauma in a set of events that have really lasting adverse effects on our well-being. So I hands down say, don't do the toxic positivity thing.
I think everybody just got a break from stress when all of us collectively at the same time said, oh, I wonder if Kristen's wearing pants.
However we need to connect is fine with me. I'm going to skip this. It's just a brain break, but we're running out of time. So it will be in my slides if you want to use it for any kind of event or anything. And then I'm just going to skip on to values. So when we talk about mental wellness, we talk about values. And your values are a guide for where you want to go in life. If you live life according to your values, you're more likely to be mentally well and to be able to handle overwhelming or challenging situations. So that's just a list of questions that speak to your values. I won't read them all. How do you treat yourself and others? And do you treat yourself as well as you treat others? Do you find value in your work, in your relationships? What does a spiritual life mean to you? We're just going to touch on a few of those questions. They will be in the slides. Values are not wishes and they're not goals, so they're different. Values are action-oriented, not outcome. So finding an exercise you enjoy to get some movement, to move your body is a value, not exercising 3 times per week. That's a goal. So we're just going to think about this. This is our retirement party. Congratulations. We're going to have a retirement party. You just retired and it's time for your party. You've invited your friends, your family, your coworkers, if you have clients, your clients. At your retirement party, I want you to think about what food is there. Do you have like bar food? Do you have health food? What kind of food is at your retirement party? And then what kind of music is at your retirement party? And any of these you want to share, fine. You can just think about them. But if you've got something you're like, really, in my retirement party, I have to have Bon Jovi, then share. What music is at your retirement party? What are people doing? Are they playing games? Are they doing karaoke? Playing beer pong? What does your retirement party look like? So then you've got a microphone and there's people going to the microphone. Who is standing in line to speak at your retirement party? And what does the first person say about you? So you've got your party, you know what it looks like. Somebody's coming up, they're going to say something about you. And you probably have an idea of what they would say. So what you're thinking about is, would you be satisfied with what they said about you? Does what they say about you align with your values? And that's really just a thought exercise for you to think, am I living my values? Do other people see that I'm living my values? Do I even know what my values are? I'm going to touch just for a minute on depression. When we are not mentally well, we can struggle with sadness, depression, anxiety, having difficulty managing our emotions. And you can have bouts of depression and anxiety without being clinically diagnosed with depression. Depression can manifest in physical symptoms because physical and mental wellness are linked. So physical signs of depression might include chronic pain, fatigue no matter how much you sleep, change in appetite, loss of interest, brain fog where you just really can't concentrate on anything, feelings of guilt and shame, which don't help anyone. So what I want to know from you is, what are some things that help you when you're feeling depressed? What helps lift you up? And for one for me is images. And I love mental health comics. And this comic is by Gemma Carell, a seasonal depression. I love her comics. So that I go looking for mental health comics when I'm not feeling well. What do you guys do?
At times, I just turn on the radio
Okay.
and music.
Music. So music's a big one. Yeah, that's great.
My problem with music is that I tend to want to I end up listening to things that are sad and they make me feel worse. I love music, but my thing is, my kids are just at a fun age, man. I just try to pour into what they're doing and it really takes my mind off stuff.
Okay, so distract yourself with something that someone else enjoys. That's a great one. Take a walk, get outside, visit family. You have a list of people.
Ice cream's a good idea too.
Ice cream always serves a lot of purposes.
That's something I do as well. If I don't listen to the radio, I like to just be alone and quiet.
Okay, so just some quiet space. Yard work, roll the dog. Ice cream, driving, physical activity because it releases endorphins that Lindsay mentioned earlier. And we kind of get that hit of dopamine. Go swimming, medication, Sometimes we need antidepressant support or support groups outside, getting some sunlight, right? Vitamin D, listen to comedy, talk to others, engage with friends. Okay, so those are some really good ideas, lots of strategies. Desserts, for sure. I know you meant good. And then the other thing that was mentioned earlier was anxiety, panic, and worry. So we also experience anxiety. It doesn't mean you have an anxiety disorder, or you may have this anxiety disorder. A lot of people do, and a lot of people really are suffering from anxiety right now. So sometimes we experience anxiety and might result in difficulty performing tasks or panic attacks when your heart is racing and you just feel like you might have a heart attack. That's a panic attack. Sometimes that feels that way. The sense of impending doom, that one's a real common one with panic and worry. Just feel overwhelmed, nervous, restless, or tense. And some things that might combat anxiety are yoga, exercise, meditation, so our mindfulness stuff, and sometimes you might need medication for that too. And then the one I want to practice is a grounding technique. I use this personally a lot, and I use it a lot with my kids, and I just use it a lot with anybody who seems stressed or anxious. So this is called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. So our senses act like an anchor and pull us out of our head where our anxious and negative thoughts are, and it helps us regain our footing. So we're going to do this together. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to go through this and a couple other things, and then we're going to move on to Carolyn's presentation, and I will send you the rest of these ideas, and I will include your ideas as well. But let's take the time to do this one. So everybody just take a deep breath in and let it out, and then 5 things you can see is what you're going to think of. So look around in your environment and really think about color or things that are appealing to you, inside, outside. 5 things you can see. So I have a plant in my office that has these bright red leaves. I have my water glass. I have some fidgets. I have a lot of fidgets, but I'm looking at one that's an octopus that turns in and out with a smiley face. So you think of 5 things that you can see. Notice the shape. Think about the object and if it helps you or something you don't like, but you're only thinking about those 5 things you can see. Okay, take another deep breath in and think of 4 things that you can touch or feel. So it might be your shirt on your arm, or the hair on the back of your neck, the way something feels against you, the texture, the temperature, if something's cool or warm, maybe your socks keep your feet warm. Or maybe it's a sensation under you. Maybe you have a dishwasher on in another room and you can feel that vibration. So 4 things you can touch or feel. And take a deep breath in, and 3 things that you can hear. So this one, you might have to close your eyes for. I can hear the fan of my computer. You might hear traffic, birds, the air conditioner or heater, depending on where you are, dog snoring. 2 things that you can smell. I don't have a sense of smell, so I'm going to think back to 2 things that I really like the smell of. So if you can't smell anything right now, or there's nothing around you, just think of 2 of your favorite smells. And then 1 more deep breath in, and 1 thing that you can taste. So leftover lunch, mint, coffee, toothpaste, and if you can't taste of anything, just think of your favorite thing to taste, which might be better than mint or coffee. And then take 1 more deep breath in and out. I'm going to talk really quickly about resilience because our theme today is recharging resilience, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn. So what helps us handle our trauma, stress, anxiety, and other negative experiences? Resilience. And resilience we hear so much about right now. I mean, it's part of today, right? Resilience. The ability to overcome serious hardship or to be able to withstand and recover from difficult conditions. That's what resilience is. And we can think of it like this visual, like a seesaw. On one side, you have positive outcomes, protective experiences, coping skills, relationships. And then we all experience significant adversity. We all experience suffering. It's part of the human experience. Those are our negatives, the other side. And resilience tips us towards the positive outcomes, even when we're loaded down with those negative factors. And how we develop resilience is with stable relationships, with core experiences, life skills, strengthening those, and with positive experiences. So they come from faith, hope, cultural traditions, feeling like you're in control of your own decisions, executive things, executive functioning, learning new skills, managing your daily life, even using things like calendars and to-do lists build those core skills that lean you towards being resilient. So thank you all for hanging here with me. I really appreciate your time. I will put the rest of my slides in Dropbox and I'll share the link while Carolyn is doing her presentation. And Carolyn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey guys, real quick before Carolyn starts, we're going to do about a 3 or 4 minute break here. Come back, it's 1:53 on my clock. So we'll come back at about 1:57, 1:58, and I'll give everybody a second or two to get back. Just real quick, a couple housekeeping things. Kristen, phenomenal. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And we'll be calling you again in the future to do more such lovely things for us. You ready for Carolyn Wheeler? Carolyn will be on in about 5 minutes. And there will be an evaluation that will be emailed to you if you register today before 11:30. I would need you all to fill it out when you get done so you get credit for being here. All right. So Carolyn, if you still want to start getting ready, we'll be back in about 3 minutes now. Okay, if everybody wants to start filtering back in, give everybody a minute here to get back in the groove. When we originally decided to do these mini retreats, we call them, we wanted to make sure we built in a little time for everybody just to chill for a second and not get too fatigued from Zoom. I think we were talking before this about how exhausting it could be even to be a presenter on Zoom anymore, because we spend so much of our time not being able to interact and to read body language and facial expressions and those kinds of things. So we wanted to give everybody a chance to take a little breath, grab a little bite, that kind of stuff, go to the bathroom, all those good things that we have to do to survive. So I'm going to not take up any more of Carolyn's time. I just will say I had a big long bio for Carolyn, but the most personal thing I could say is that Carolyn is probably as dedicated of a person to people with disabilities as I have ever met, a strong advocate. She has a whole list of programs that she was instrumental in starting, some that have helped me personally, and many of which have helped a multitude, for lack of a better word, of people just kind of navigate the world. Carolyn is a personal friend and is one of the good people in the world. So I'll turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Carolyn Wheeler.
Well, Jason Jones, that's the best introduction I've ever had in my life. So thank you. I'm glad this is being recorded. Maybe I'll pull that up and listen to it sometime when that's one of the things I do when I'm feeling a bit down, actually, is I don't know, have you ever just saved, I just save cards people send me. Like I've got a few here on my desk in any event. So thank you for that word of encouragement. So that was just a tremendous presentation, Kristen, hard to follow. But what I'm hoping I'm going to talk about now are some actual tools you could use to do all the things that Kristen just talked about. And they are most importantly free and online. And I will also share a Dropbox link. What I may end up doing, because I don't have that ready to roll, I should have done that, but I got a phone call in the middle of the break. So I may just send it to Brandon and maybe he can send it out to everyone who's registered today. So I have been privileged actually about 5 years ago, but have really spent quite a bit of time over the last 2 years learning about something called the life course tools. And these are the values, the mission, the purpose of the life course tools. I guess the values are that all people, so regardless of whether or not you're a person with a disability or you're just, regardless, then their families have the right to live, love, learn, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in the community. And so these tools were developed by, well, actually, I just want to say that to me, these tools really provide a vehicle for helping us to actually take some steps, if we need to, toward whether it's connection, wellness, greater meaning, or healthy thinking. And so one of the foundational concepts or frameworks for this particular group of tools are this idea that we really need to invest time and energy across 3 buckets. And so part of what we're doing today really is about information and training. We're discovering some things maybe that we've learned over the course of COVID or just over the course of our lives, that we get information about things that interest us, or we get information about things that we need, and we may need help navigating those. So I bet we can all think about situations where it was really helpful, whether it was a person who'd been through the same experience, or maybe it was a professional who helped us to provide navigation. And so that to me is just a helpful concept to think about in terms of whether it's for our own lives or helping somebody else to plan a good life for themselves. Secondly, and we're also doing this today, we're connecting and networking. And so, and I know this is really true for folks who have experienced a spinal cord injury, or whether it's people who maybe have experienced, have a lived experience with some other circumstance that was challenging. I myself, my husband died when I was 49, and I didn't have much company then. I'm sorry to say, in all honesty, I have lots of company now. Now, the fact that I now know 20, that's not an exaggeration, maybe 25 women who their husbands have all died. It's not that we're going to be BFFs, but I can say that it is often helpful to connect, to network. A really dear friend of mine, Carol Estes, whom some of you know, her husband died very unexpectedly the year after mine did. And I just know that my having had that experience was really helpful to her as she navigated some very, very difficult times. So just connecting and networking. And it can also be around positive things as well, right? So it may be connecting and networking about where it is you'd like to go when you feel like you can go on a trip. And you may want to connect and network with somebody who's been to that place or has been on that cruise ship or whatever it may be. And then there may be goods and services, whether those are paid for by yourself, you pay yourself personally, or pay through some kind of public funding source that you're eligible for, that again can help people to kind of put together what we would think of as a good life. And so one of the key concepts, or really foundational tools in the Charting the Life course, is this concept of thinking about and developing a good life. And what does that mean for you personally? And then what I find very helpful about this is this idea of trajectory. So am I on a trajectory toward that good life, or am I on a trajectory toward things that I don't want? And so often we may not even be aware that our actions may be, again, leading us toward the things that we want, or they may be leading us down that, whatever that is, a path that isn't going to get us where we want to be. And it's really helpful to remember that direction, not intention, not even good information, but the direction that we're on really determines destination. So for example, I am going to go to Louisville on Sunday to visit with a woman for whom who's a good friend, who has an intellectual disability, with whom I've been friends, but also I'm like a sibling to her. I also figure out things in her life because her impact of disability, those are just the things that I figure out for her, she's not capable of figuring out. And actually we're going to go figure out, hopefully at the AT&T store, this new wireless box that she's received, that we need to figure out how we can get it to work so that her phone will continue to work. And frankly, I am going to take my older daughter, who's really tech savvy at these things, not because I don't think I can do it, but just I just have greater confidence when she's around. I'll just say that in any event. But if I get on 64, and if I get on I-64 going east, I don't care how much I want to get to Louisville from Lexington. I'm not going to get there. I mean, I got to get on 64 going west if I want to get to Louisville. So similarly with our life and some of the questions that Kristen talked about, some of the concepts can really, again, help us to be on that trajectory toward a good life or on a trajectory toward what we don't want. And the life course tools are across these 6 life domains, which also relate to those 4 categories that Kristen talked about and I mentioned earlier. So it's really about thinking about a good life in terms of what do you want to do during the day? And what are you doing and what do you maybe want to do? Where do you want to live? And I've been thinking about that a whole bunch recently for lots and lots of reasons, but in any event, but where do you want to live and how do you want to live, and in relationship to what community access, transportation, what modifications you may need to be able to live there successfully. How about the connection part of your life as it relates to social and spirituality? So building friendships and relationships, leisure activities, personal networks, and faith community. That's important to you. Healthy living, that certainly has been a main focus of a lot of our thinking, especially over the last 18 months, but certainly, hopefully now going forward, we can be more intentional around that in ways that make us feel, again, mentally and physically healthy. Safety and security, which is actually one of the reasons why I think I want to just keep living where I live, because I just feel really safe and secure where I live. And that's just real important to me. I live alone. So it's just real, and I don't have a dog and I don't want a dog. I'm so sorry, but I don't want one because frankly, I can't afford one. But that's just real important to me. I just feel really safe and it's really quiet where I live. And so I made a big list the other day about all the things about why I like living where I live. And so I'm just going to continue to figure that out, how I can continue to stay there. And then last but not least would be around advocacy and engagement. So do you feel like you just really, I don't know where I contribute. I don't know where I have meaning and purpose. And so maybe you feel as though you're not really able to drive your life as much as you like to. So Brandon, if you would go ahead and start to set up breakout rooms, please. Now, I'm going to hopefully see if yes, okay.
Carolyn, what do you think? We got 20 people. How many do you want in a room?
I love 4 in a room. How's that?
Math is correct. 4 times 5 is 20.
Right, and that may be including Kristen and I would join, which is fine with me. So I just want you to pick one of these domains. And just when we get in the groups to just kind of talk about where that's just something you want to be thinking a bit more about. So again, is it what you're doing during the day? And this might not have to do with job or career, but am I sharing my screen, by the way? You're seeing, it should say life domain vision tool person.
Yeah, you're good, Carol.
Thank you. So maybe that part of your life is pretty good. Thank you, Kristen. Again, are you okay with where you're living or with whom you're living? Because you may be living with people, but that may not be working well for you. So, and then social and spirituality, this may be a big thing for a lot. Again, maybe feeling safer to reconnect, to be out and about. So a big change for me in COVID that I'll just share. And actually, Jason and I saw each other at the church he attends for a while. I just decided I just really needed to change churches after being at one for 24 years. And that may just sound bizarre to you, but it's been a really good thing for me. I just really needed to meet some new people. I won't go any further. And there wasn't anything wrong with the people. I just felt the need to meet some new people and to have some connections that offered me opportunities to contribute more around volunteer activities here in Lexington. Excuse me.
And Karen, can I just add too that I think sometimes that socially is so difficult to do because it's a bit of a leap of faith, and that we get so used to doing the same things over and over again. We're afraid of the consequences when there's really not any, but to be self-aware enough to decide that I'm going to make a huge change in my life from something that's been such a significant part of my life takes a lot of guts. And church is an example of that. A job's an example of that. Where you live, all the things that you're talking about. Sometimes a new perspective is only obtainable if you have a different thing to look at to start with. So, yeah.
Exactly. And so this, again, so healthy living, is it just, I really just need to focus more on on healthy living. Am I in a situation, and this maybe you may not want to share this with people you don't know that well, but if there's something going on where you don't feel safe this would be around or if it's just an area where you're thinking about, there are just some things that I need to figure out, going forward, that will make sure that I stay safe and secure. And then are there any other valued roles that you'd like or responsibilities you'd like to be involved with? So you don't have to talk about this from this, you can just talk about whatever you want to talk about it, but I'd like it to be focused around, if it's around either one of those domains or back to kind of our theme for today, or, which is if it's just really around, really those domains are around connection, wellness, meaning, or healthy thinking. So if you just even want to pick one of those. So Brandon, if you can go ahead, let me see, and see what time it is. According to my computer, it's 2:09. Let's do this for about 8 minutes. Okay, Brandon, if you can bring us back in at 2:17. So a good life really requires, though, this holistic lens, really, and around either those, those 4 dimensions that we're talking about today, which I think these 6 domains actually capture. So sometimes we do, and to some extent, even in our group a little bit, we talked about some of the things that we don't want, but at the same time, we were also talking about some things we do want. And so I think as we continue to, again, move forward, hopefully we can get clearer about what it is we do want. And ideally, and again, thinking more now about folks who have some impact of disability in their life, which I increasingly do, frankly, I have impact of disability in my life related to having just gotten older, in all honesty, but wanting to think about that. I don't want whatever services, whether they're, again, you're paying for them or they're being paid for through a publicly funded service. All too often, they tend to separate people from their families and from their community. And so one of the conceptual cornerstones to turning the life course is this idea of having integrated services and supports that really then help to support the person to be a part of their family. And again, family is who you define as your family. That doesn't necessarily mean people to whom you are biologically related, but again, people that you define as family. And then also to support you to be part of whatever community life that you want to be a part of. So the integrated support star has 5 areas, and perhaps the one that I want to encourage each of us today to think about are just our own personal strengths and assets that we bring. And that too often, again, this is that we tend to think about ourselves in terms of a really deficiency orientation, all the things that either I can't do or I'm not good at, but to think about our own strengths, assets, and skills that we have. And then relationships, again, that could be family, friends, acquaintances, and that could include, again, for me, some of my dearest friends, actually, I have 3 very, very dear friends, 2 of whom I've already made plans to see next year. So again, our conversation earlier in my group about not wanting to travel, I want to see them badly enough that I'm gonna overcome some of my hesitations about traveling. I have known these three women since 1978. Tells you how old I am, a bit. But I want to, and at where I am in my season of life, I want to see people, not places. So I'm traveling to see them. I'm traveling to see people, not places. I've been fortunate to, frankly, go about everywhere I ever want to go. So my travel plans are going to involve people. And then how does technology help? And I know every one of you, because we've talked about a little bit, but you got one of these things. I mean, you got a smartphone. There's something smart in your life somewhere, or whether it's, and I know for me, I'm an iPhone, I have an iPad, and those just really help me a lot. They help me tremendously to keep my life organized. And frankly, this helps me because I have a daughter who lives in Sweden, and we are able to FaceTime for free, whether it's audio or video. And that's a very key component to my mental health. But it could be environmental technology or again, just assistive technology. And then, what are community resources, places, groups, could be government resources, and then eligibility specific supports. So we don't have time to do another breakout group, but I am wanting to show
So I'm going to kind of just give you some quick ways that it's been utilized. So we have a lot of people call us and talk to us about transportation. And so I'm like, that's a great way to problem solve through the STAR. Again, you don't need to pull this out. You should be teaching yourself to constantly be thinking about the 5 parts of the STAR. So the first thing I would do if someone said, help me think through transportation. Had I done the STAR before thinking about life course, I probably would have started, well, is there share fare in our community? Can we figure out how the Medicaid waiver can fund that service? Can the provider provide that transportation? And those are all things that are available. And those are all things that are down in the green. But that's not where we start anymore. Where we start is, what is that personal strengths and assets? Is that person going to learn how to drive one day? What do we need to do to help them buy a car or learn how to navigate using a car? Or maybe they can't do that, but maybe they can learn how to ride the bus to work or get around with their friends. So that means we might need to teach them how to ride a bus. Or maybe that person could walk or learn how to bicycle in their community to where they need to go. So we first start there. Then what we do is we start thinking about what is available in our community. Is it a walkable community? Does it have bus lines? You know, a subway system or something in that community? Again, always thinking about that, what am I going to need to teach them to do to learn how to do that? We also know that you can use Uber or Lyft or any other sort of technology to call a ride. So are we teaching people to access those types of services and supports and utilize that? Or maybe if they decide that taking a bus is what they want, can they get an app that enables them to know about when to get on and off those buses? Or maybe what they're calling about is they want transportation to their job. Have we looked at transportation, sharing, and is there somebody at the job that maybe can come pick them up and we can give them a couple dollars to get to work? So the whole idea is how am I using this to problem solve? Again, not any one way is better than the other. So we might use funding from our Medicaid waiver supports or some other sort of government supports to fund the iPad to teach somebody how to ride their bus, or maybe it's those services that cover the cost of a Lyft or an Uber. So again, problem solving, we put that problem in the middle of that STAR, and then we force ourselves to go around and really think through all of our options.
So I am going to, actually, I just want to copy and paste. There we go. Copy and paste the website and put that into the chat box if anybody's kind of interested in spending some time learning more about it. I also will copy and paste, maybe if Jason has some closing words, I can probably get my Google Drive and copy and paste that into the chat box. But one last thing I just want to share before I leave is something that I had found from another organization that actually I've learned a lot from. It's called Planned Lifetime Advocacy Network. It's an organization started by families in Vancouver, Canada, who were all in their 70s at the time when they started this, and they were concerned about what happens to their adult child when they are no longer here. And so this was from them staying socially connected during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm going to copy and paste. This is just on their homepage. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat box if you're interested. But I thought this was helpful. So if there's somebody that you want to be, that you're concerned about, or frankly, if you're concerned about you. So just put this idea about don't wait to be asked. Don't wait to be asked for help, but also don't wait, frankly, don't wait to be contacted. Again, I live alone. If I have a choice, I can eat 21 meals a week by myself, or I can decide I'm gonna eat with somebody at some point, but I've got to usually take the initiative to do that. So don't wait to be asked. And for a variety of reasons, we may be afraid of what people will say, but and again, if people you think they need help, be confident and cheerful, and don't give up even if the first couple of responses are lukewarm. And then secondly, make it a team effort. So right now I have a very, very dear friend who informed a group of us I've known her for, 30 years, but she has pretty significant cancer. And so I organized a meal train. That's really easy to do online. If you're not familiar with it, just go to Meal Train. And then I did have her have to send me, I don't know all of her friends, but there were about 17 of us that all signed up to take a meal. Unfortunately, right now, she's actually in the hospital. So I've halted the meal train, but it's given us a way to help connect and to be present to her and her husband at this time. So again, making it a team effort. Technology does help, and we are fortunate, at least those of us on the webinar today, we have that too. We have that, and that little things can make a big difference, whether that's a phone call, a text, a Netflix subscription. I'd love the bag of cookies. And then really and truly just to remember that, and I think I'm assuming that's true of each of us here today, that we do care and we want to be helpful, and that the other people out there also care and want to help, so that social connections may be the difference between life and death. So it's 2:28, Jason, so I'm going to cease and desist and see if you have some closing thoughts, words, and just thank everybody for being here today. I have found this really helpful and enlightening and engaging and enjoyable.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And I just wanted to say the groups, I got some feedback from some of the different groups. And, we're talking about being connected, and we're talking about being out of isolation and being a part of something bigger than us. Always helps a lot. We had a lot of great tips today from Kristen and from Carolyn. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I posted in the chat the link to sign up for the Kentucky Congress on Spinal Cord Injury. We are a group that fully believes in not just well-being, but a good quality of life, a high quality of life for people with all disabilities and not, but especially for people with paralysis. We would really love to have you guys come and spend a little time with us next Tuesday. We will send out an evaluation link after this. If you need credit for being here, then you have to fill that out. It should already probably be in your inbox if it's not already. Just take a few minutes to fill that out. And we will be back here again. Information will be coming out. We'll be back here again in November and December for our last two of these workshops. Again, I want to thank the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. I think Mark has been on and participating in one of the groups. We really appreciate Mark supporting us by being here and adding something to the group. If you're struggling with something, reach out. We learned several years ago in the spinal cord community that we were losing people to some pretty rough stuff just because they felt isolated and felt like they were not engaging in the world in a proper way. This was before COVID. And we know that has been significantly exacerbated with the idea of being stuck, and not just being stuck and isolated, but also the fear of if you decide to get out in the world that it might end up killing you is a way to heighten that anxiety. So if you're going through something, reach out to myself, reach out to the Congress, reach out to any people that have been on this call. Lindsay, Kristen, Carol, all of us are kind of dedicated to what we do. And we don't just preach it, we believe it. So thank you again for giving us a little chunk of your afternoon. And I wish all of you good health and good times, and keep it real, y'all. We'll talk to you soon.